Hi, good evening. It looks like we have a quorum and we have a pretty short agenda, so I think we can get started. Uh, and we'll see if the other two commissioners can make it. Welcome. This is the July 2023 meeting of ANC 1C, the general meeting. We have a pretty brief agenda tonight, so hopefully it won't take us too long, but we'll see. So we'll just start quick introductions from everyone. I don't know. We'll start with 1C01.
Hi, Daniel Michelson Horowitz, 1C01, the southern end of the neighborhood.
Hi, Lee Dixon representing 1CO2. I'm the wedge between Columbia and Connecticut.
Peter Wood, 1C03, Biltmore to Wyoming, 18th to 19th. Two of those streets which are now one ways.
Hi, Joe Van Y, 1CO4. We're the Pacific Northwest of the ANC.
So Margaret Stevens representing 1C05. We're the part of Linear Heights at the back of the zoo with the famous kiosk.
Hi, Linda Laughlin, 1CO6, the eastern side of Linear Heights, closest to 16th and Harvard.
Hi, all. Commissioner Jake Falaschini, 1CO7, from Florida up to Columbia, 18th over to 17th, and then another block up Columbia.
Commissioner Shapiro, it's you. You're on mute.
There we go. Okay. Barney Shapiro, 1CO8. If Joe is the Pacific Northwest, God help me, I must be Florida.
Thanks. I believe Commissioner Jones, who would be, I don't know, New England. I think he's visiting family, so I'm not sure if he's gonna be able to make it tonight. But I guess we'll just move along. Starting just with officers' reports. I'll go first. Chair's report. A couple of items. So first, and it's been slower. I guess this is how government works, right? It's been slower than it was anticipated, but I think it's coming along in terms of acquiring an intern. I spoke with someone that was referred from the intern program that we applied for through our April resolution or decision. I think I have someone lined up. I'll pass up the list of kind of expected everything to everyone just to double check that I'm writing it correctly. Because we already voted on it last month, 2 months ago, whatever we voted on $250 stipend a month until the end of this year, with the possibility of renewing in the future. I've got a contract mostly written up, so I'll send that to everyone just to have a look. But it looks like we're going to get someone. Their name is Angeles. She is currently a student at Morgan State University in Baltimore. I think a lifelong Ward 7 resident, or at least currently a Ward 7 resident, math major. I'll let her introduce herself when she gets the chance at a future meeting, but I'm excited. She seems pretty detail-oriented and organized, and also is interested in learning a lot about ANC work. So I think that could be a really good fit. As far as the meetings, I did receive, I think it was sent out to all chairs in the city, like a survey from the OANC that's regarding basically social media and website needs. Not sure what they're up to, but there might be a possibility that they're brewing up some sort of plan, I think, to more streamline website support. I'm not sure what that'll mean, but we still have the possibility to apply for funds. So I'll still figure out if we can find something that fits within that budget so we won't have to spend our own funds, especially if the city is going to, or ONC is going to be amping up their support for that. So we'll see. Hopefully those are good directions for things. Let's move to the treasurer next. You have a treasurer's report, Commissioner Shapiro.
No treasurer's report other than the fact that there is a concern. I pass this back to Linda, that the grant, because DCPS currently funds the grant that they partially fund the grant that we approved, I believe, in March. There may be a prohibition on grants that DC government, in this case DCPS, already funded. So I'm going to ask both the auditor and the OANC for direction on that. I don't want to send out a check for $4,000 that the auditor comes back and says, no, this was illegal. So it may be a situation where we have to suggest to the applicant that they reword their grant request from us so it doesn't appear to mimic what the city already is supporting.
That makes sense. That's something that in past commissions, I know that's a pretty typical issue. With the pandemic, it was a bit exceptional because the rules were a bit more flexible on what types of services could be, or what types of grants could be funded. That has since expired, but it was a pretty common thing for us to kind of work proactively with the applicant as well as OANC to just basically make it so that everything worked congruently. So definitely not.
That OANC is and the auditor are imposing things that they're changing things that they approved years ago. I mean, they asked for a new W-9 for us, but there's no that mimics the W-9 for the last 4 years that they've had. So it's a little disconcerting. It may just be that they're trying to justify their own existence because their budget does not come out of our statutory budget. Their budget is separate from our statutory budget. You understand? We have a statutory budget as the ANC. All ANCs do as a whole. I forgot what the number is. But the OANC and of course the auditor's budget do not come out of those funds. So they always have to justify their budget.
Noted. Probably not the time for that conversation, but an interesting one.
They can yell at me.
Secretary's report.
The report is that we have should have a normal committee schedule and meeting schedule for the month of July. Tonight's July 5th, and we're having our July ANC meeting on the 12th at 7 p.m. Also remote on Zoom. We will have our ABC and Public Safety Committee meeting on July 19th at 7 p.m. also on Zoom. We'll have our PZT, Planning, Zoning, and Transportation Committee meeting. And on July 26th at 7 p.m. on Zoom, we'll have our Public Services and the Environment Committee meeting. These are subject to cancellation if nothing comes up, no agenda items. Right now, at least, we do have agenda items for the ABC and Public Safety Committee meeting, which I will discuss in my ANC report. And that's it for the Secretary's report.
Perfect. Let's get into just that. I don't know, same order. Go ahead.
Can I ask clarifying? So since I'm still new here, August, I understand that we do not hold regular meetings. Is that correct?
Yeah, so
Correct.
Sure, go ahead. So technically ANCs are only required to have 9 meetings, full meetings per calendar year. ANC 1C typically has enough items because we have enough bars basically and people modifying their houses that stuff comes up. But August usually is a time. I think the year before I started as commissioner, they had an August meeting. It is my understanding that it is in everyone's best interest, I think, in most circumstances, to avoid that. And some ANCs, I think, take July through, like, some of them take a very long recess, and hopefully we can at least get 1 month off. So as of right now, it seems like it's feasible. So that's kind of the goal I think we can push towards.
Yeah, but so anything that comes through committee in July is going to be held over for the September for a full commission meeting, or would it be better to? I'm just talking this out, having an August full commission meeting and not have committee meetings in August or a full commission meeting in the beginning of September.
I mean, it depends on what the items are, is really what it comes down to, because it's usually about timeliness, right? And also nothing has to go through a committee. And it's having the main meeting where we have a full quorum of full commissioners. That's the only thing that actually can have official items passed on outside of the auspices of the commission. Anyone else have thoughts on this?
There are a couple PZT items that are more pressing. One is there's an appeal that I think that they're going to ask for an opinion on from the ANC. And then, of course, the issue of U Street, which needs to go back to PZT since the context has changed. It's no longer an uncontested case. So, things have changed in terms of that. So that might be an opportunity for us to not make hasty, uneducated comments now that the zoning commission realizes
Mr. Chair, I'm just gonna call that it's not okay for someone to say uneducated to the decisions of the other
Well, I was
commissioners.
referring to Robert's Rules of Order, actually. I didn't have the exact quote out of it, but that's what I was referring back to.
Both points acknowledged. I think we can move on a bit. And we don't have to resolve our schedule right this very moment, but to the extent to which it is in the community's best interest to not have an August meeting, I think we can continue with that. But if it seems like something is important enough, it has the timeliness enough, we can have another short agenda meeting in August if it really comes down to it, but we can discuss elsewhere. We can start with you again, Commissioner Michelson Horowitz. If you're chair of a committee, please just briefly mention some of the items that you're dealing with on this month and SMD reports.
Yeah, I'm not a chair of a committee, but I do want to acknowledge that the one way on Wyoming, Calorama, the pair, but otherwise no updates from 1CO1.
1CO2.
So on the PZT side, our upcoming meeting in 2 weeks, we will be hearing from Kevin with DDOT regarding the bus priority project on Columbia Road. I think that's going to be a pretty important and potentially long meeting, depending on how many people show up for that one agenda item. We have nothing else just yet, but I know that there's a lot of people who feel passionately about it. And then here on the home front, the only thing that I've been getting contacted with recently is the 7-Eleven across the street there's been like an incredible uptick of very loud, angry, violent people that are hanging out there and being very disruptive to the community. And I'm not really sure what to do with that situation. There's just people outside screaming and cursing, sucker punching people. I've had to call the police on them at least twice in the past month. I know some of my neighbors have as well. So I'm curious to know what everyone's thoughts are on that, or like what necessary steps I can take to resolve this problem. And Commissioner Horowitz, I think that's technically in your jurisdiction, but I think it's people like on my side of Columbia that are reaching out to me. So
Yeah, I had not heard of this. Thank you.
This is at the intersection of the border of all three of our SMDs. I think I've heard some constituents mentioning similar things, so we can talk, amongst ourselves as well. Of course, it's not directly within the purview of a commissioner, but we still, people expect us to be aware at the very least, so we can talk about strategies. It's definitely tricky.
I did suggest that as a possible location for one of the CCTV cameras that we were requested to provide priorities.
Yeah, we'll see if it advances, and hopefully something like that could be helpful. One quick question, Commissioner Dixon. PZT, there's one item currently scheduled for this month. There's not a specific resolution or proposal to support. It'd be an informational agenda item, right?
No, I mean, apparently this has been going on for 5 years. The letter of support was written last year. This is just them basically showing up saying, here's our final design concept. We're, taking feedback one more time from the community, and then we're going to go right into building it in the spring. Perfect.
Now I just asked because that would mean that there would be no item coming from committee for the future meeting. So hopefully it stays that way, but if not, it's okay. 1CO3, very happy. Again, another multiple years of efforts, fruition type situation. The 2 one-ways, the 1,800 blocks of Calorama and Wyoming are painted and converted, and I think mostly being abided by. Occasionally I see a car getting it wrong, but we'll get there. There's also just a bunch of park stuff. Calorama Park is in full bloom. People have been using a lot, stuff like that I've mentioned before, that hopefully will come to. We've had a meeting with DPR and some other stuff in terms of public beautification with art projects and things. I'm trying to get in touch with some artists, some property owners, trying to get stuff developing. But that's the main thing. There's a lot of small stuff. Hopefully at the end of the summer it'll come together. So I'll wait till then. 1CO4, Commissioner Van Wy.
Sorry, I lost the mute button there for a minute. Not a ton of updates here in 1C04. There was an issue with lights over at Walter Pierce, but the city has gotten those back on. So there are a couple that are burnt out, but hopefully we're gonna get those repaired. And otherwise, yeah, not a ton of updates here.
Thanks. 1C05, Commissioner Stevens.
Okay, so not a whole lot right now, but I did get a kind of weird message from the city concerning our favorite building, 2920, Commissioner Van Wy. That's sort of floating between worlds between you and I. So I'm going to talk to you about it. But basically, it was some notice that it possibly could be condemned. And so I don't know if that's good or that's bad or what is happening. And I've been slammed at work and I've been meaning to try to call them, to get a handle on it before I speak to you. But maybe I'll go ahead and just forward you, the message that I got. But it looks to me like it's maybe some forward motion there, because it's the first time I've ever, gotten a notification of any kind of something that had the word, condemn in it. So, they may, I guess what I'm trying to say is maybe the city's finally taking it very seriously, and we'll just see what happens. But anyway, I'll get in touch with you later this week about that. And that's all I have for now.
Thank you. 1C06, Commissioner Laughlin. There you are.
No, so we didn't have a PSE meeting this month, but I do plan to have one this month for sure, mostly as a planning meeting. Commissioner Jones and we had a nice conversation with the Potter's House about some of the involvement they've had in the community since the 60s, and gave us a couple ideas about a potential sort of community event we'd like to do in probably mid-September. The idea is to sort of have it focus on housing and invite particularly nonprofits in the area that have been working on this issue to sort of make it sort of an informational and also help teach the community. So I'd like to use our Wednesday, July 26th meeting as sort of a planning meeting to sort of think about different groups to invite. There's a potential I may need to ask for funding to rent a room from Potter's House if I can't find a free venue, but I can put together that proposal and see what that would mean. But other than that, that's it for PSE. For 1C06, I did get a couple requests, which I will ask some of the more knowledgeable ANCs here. One request was to have a crosswalk put in at 18th and Summit. So when you turn, if you're coming up 18th from like say Harvard, it is a very narrow two-way street, but when you get to the top, it's sort of hard to see around the intersection. And there was a request to put in another crosswalk, which I believe needs to be submitted as a TSI assessment. It needs to be a traffic study, basically, if they'll do it. And then the other request also related to around that area. We have a one-way on Harvard, but it starts at 18th and Harvard. And then it's two-way if you're going to the zoo, and then one way coming down the hill. And neighbors in that area have noticed that people are often turning the wrong way. It's probably drivers who aren't familiar. I took pictures and noticed there is not a do not enter sign. There's only the arrow sign that's crossed out. So I believe that's also going to have to be a TSI request as well. So if that is something different than that, let me know, but I think I do need to do, thank you, Lauren, I will look at that. But that's all I got to report, other than it's just really hot and humid.
Hey, Linda, if they already have, if it's already one way there, and it's just a matter of signage or lines on the ground, on the street rather, that won't require a TSI study. It's
Okay.
only when they're making a change that they require a TSI study.
Okay. And I'll look at what note, I see what Lauren said, but yeah, I wasn't quite sure because it's not a change, it's just to ask for an additional signage, basically. Okay, so maybe if it's not that, then we can still go the other route with the 311. Okay.
That might be simpler. Commissioner Falskini, go ahead.
Hey, thanks. I'm gonna just report first on the agenda for the ABC and Public Safety Committee meeting this upcoming month. So we actually have a few requests that have come in, some placard notifications. So first we'll do our regular police report update, public safety update. After that, we'll go to the Foxtrot liquor license applications that we received last month, but they needed to push it back to July. So those are for retailers Class C restaurant license and a retailer's Class B full service grocery store applications, and that's at 1827 Adams Mill Road. Then we'll hear a application for a new retailer's Class D restaurant license for the new Queens Cafe, which is located at 2405 18th Street Northwest. After that, we'll consider a request for a new retailer's Class C restaurant license. It's actually an expansion for Federalist Pig up on Columbia Road. And then the last one that we got was for a new, let's see, what kind is it? For mixed, oops. A Class C restaurant license for mixed BU is the name of the applicant. And that is at 2427 18th Street Northwest. So we actually have a fair number of these coming up in July. So we'll hear those and then hopefully have time to work on negotiating settlement agreements with those various businesses in July and August while we're in recess, and then can come back in September and vote on those as a commission. For my individual SMD, I'm really excited to announce, and this may be actually the first public announcement of it, that Jubilee Housing received funding from the Housing Trust Fund for their development at 2400 Ontario Road Northwest. I am been very pleased to support this development through its various iterations over the last 2 years. The ANC passed a resolution in support of this development and the one on Kalorama maybe a year and a half ago. We supported the two designs that they had coming up, including this one. I think this will take a little bit of community involvement because there will be some post-incarceration housing as a part of this project, which we know that when folks are supported with housing and with jobs, that their recidivism rates are exceptionally low, almost as low as the Gen Pop. So this is a great opportunity for our community to support folks coming out of from incarcerated situations, to reunite them with their families, because there's going to be family housing that's a part of this project at 2400 Ontario Road. I will also have job training, a really cool design. We'll bring them in to come and talk about it with the neighborhood and come and chat with PCT, but I've been very happy to support this project and was very excited to see that they got the funding from the Housing Trust Fund in order to do this. So for all those folks who say that the buildings in IZ doesn't go to help anyone in the neighborhood, here is one very good example of how you are absolutely wrong. This does serve our neighborhood. It does provide housing for low-income folks in our neighborhood. And this is one really good example of that, of how you are absolutely wrong about that. So that's it. Otherwise, I hope get a scooter removed on Champlain Road, working with some folks in the neighborhood and other very, minor small things in the neighborhood, just quality of life stuff. But other than that, this was the big announcement this month.
That's a great announcement. Glad to hear they got that. Commissioner Shapiro, it's all you.
I met with Meridian House, not about their development, because that's all in the courts. I don't know if y'all know that, but Meridian House is the large nonprofit that is across from 1661 Crescent and across from Beekman Place. And they're going to build, this has been in the courts for 4 or 5 years now, and just got remanded in December. They're going to sell off a section on 16th Street and build a large, strictly market rate housing there. That what they're not actually involved in the court case. It's just their name. It's the developer that's involved in the court case. I met with them though, with Meridian House, about parking issues. And, hopefully we've had several instances recently where whether it's diplomats, limos, I guess not Suburbans, I guess the Suburban is a limo, just idling for an hour or two at a time. And I'm sure they're doing more of it now in the summer. And also we had an instance where one of their caterers was either loading or offloading, and they blocked a road for a good 15 minutes entirely. So we're trying to work with them on that. Hopefully they'll be cognizant that it's not their employees and it's not that it's their guest and their guest employees that they really need to work with. They're not a bad neighbor. They're not a good neighbor. They're a benign neighbor. And people are worried that if we don't hold them to the parking issues, they might become a bad neighbor. So that's the only thing that we're dealing with over there. We actually got the Secret Service to pull off to the side instead of waiting for a Supreme Court justice on Crescent Street. They used to block the road until she came down. That's it.
Interesting update. Thank you. All right, so we'll move to public comments. We do have a timer. I don't think we're going to start using it tonight, just so we can practice. I did have some people last month. Oh, actually, yeah, Commissioner Michelson Horowitz, you had an additional comment. Go ahead.
If it's all right, I forgot this earlier. Thank you. So I spoke with the developer at the Universal Towers North and South at the corner of Florida and Connecticut and T Street. The last tenant there is expected to leave in September, and they hope to start construction right away. They've had to resubmit several times to the DDOT review system. They're working with DDOT to get approval of curb cut plan on Florida, where the entrance will be to the roundabout, the turnaround lobby entrance for the building, as well as, and as you may know, they're planning to remove the Flywheel building, the old movie theater that's in that sort of that's the low-rise building that was added there. So they're working to get approval of that, but they're hoping to start construction in September. They won't be doing, they won't be blocking any of the sidewalks immediately. That'll be later in the construction as they replace the facade. Initially, it's going to be a lot of internal demo, but they did commit to holding a community meeting about construction issues when they get started, so I will publicize that. And then the second thing is that following our approval of the resolution on the Oyster Adams School renovation, some of the parent advocates and community members and I met with Councilmember Nadeau and Councilmember Fruman and their staff at the school to take a tour along with the principal, and also, of course, DGS and DCPS staff were there, and we had a very intense discussion about the needs of the students. And at this point, it is in the hands of the council members to weigh the merits of the various arguments and our resolution and decide whether to ask DCPS to change course. Their plan was approved at the Historic Preservation Review Board meeting last month, but that's not where we expected to stop the renovation design. So just I want to thank all the parents and community members who have been so active on this issue. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So we'll move to community comments. Like I was saying, I have a timer. Probably not going to try it out tonight because there's not a ton of people here tonight. But I did have multiple people last month note how some of our kind of more regular public commenters with very great information were very verbose. I counted over 12 minutes for some of the people individually. So try to taper it down. I don't want to have to interrupt or anything, but if we can keep it to updates for this particular month, I think that's helpful. If anyone would like to make comments, please raise your hand at this time and we'll promote you. I think we probably have at least a couple of people. And if not, that's all right. Looks like first will be Lauren Lipsey from Councilmember Nadeau's office. Welcome, Lauren.
Hello, how are y'all?
Doing all right.
Good. I just want to share two updates on legislation that have been introduced by Councilmember Nadeau in the past month. One is the Home Visiting Services Reimbursement Act of 2023, and I think this is going to be really, really good for the district and parents in the district. It's legislation to add evidence-based home visiting services to what's covered by Medicaid. So that would require DC's Medicaid insurance program to cover home visitation services such as postpartum care for new mothers, diet consultation, nutrition education, alcohol, and substance abuse screening, and other services that are proven to be effective. So there are other states that do have this requirement, and so we're excited to be able to join them. The second, which has had a lot of coverage in papers recently, is legislation introduced that would require the district's inspector general to hire outside independent counsel to investigate sexual harassment complaints against mayoral appointees, including deputy mayors, agency and sub-agency heads, and those appointed by the mayor to boards and commissions. There is another emergency legislation that is forthcoming that will address retroactively a current situation with a former deputy mayor. But this will be hopefully enable the district to better handle sexual harassment complaints going forward that originated out of the executive branch. There were 9 co-introducers on the council with the council member, so there's strong support for this effort, and it's something that the council has already undertaken on their own and for their own sexual harassment policies. And that is it, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Any questions, commissioners? All right, we'll move on. Gerard Allen from the Mayor's Office of Community Relations is here. Welcome, Gerard. You're off mute, but I think you're back on now. So if you're talking, we can hear you.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me now?
We can see and hear you.
Gotcha. How's everyone doing?
All right. How are you?
Good. So I got a couple of notes. I'm gonna start with the district's minimum wage increase started July 1st. Mayor Bowser reminds the community that effective July 1st, 2023, the district's minimum wage will increase from the current $16.10 per hour rate to $17 an hour. Non-tip workers will move from $6 an hour to $8 an hour for tipped employees. DOES is holding a wage theft prevention webinar for stakeholders to learn more about wage law responsibilities. The webinar will be held virtually on Thursday, July 6th at 11 a.m. Also, DC Youth Meals Program. Throughout the summer, people in DC can pick up free meals at over 100 sites across the city. The meals can be picked up without needing an application or an ID. Find sites for summer pickup of free summer meals. You can call 1-800-866-348-6479. Again, that number is 1-866-348-6479. Also, I want to let everybody know that the Department of Human Resources announces a summer hiring event on July 11th. Join them on July 11th from 10 to 6 p.m. on site at MLK Library, located at 901 G Street Northwest. For our in-person hiring event, you can register for Hot Days, Hot Jobs 2.0. And for more details, you can visit dchr.dc.gov/join our team. The event is free. Individuals wishing to participate will be required to pre-register. During registration, candidates may elect up to 2 positions to be considered for. And at this time, that is all of my updates that I have for you guys. If there's any questions or any concerns, I can take those now.
Yeah, thanks so much. I don't have anything. Anyone else have questions or comments? Well, it was good to have you here. Good to see you as always.
Have a good night.
One other hand up, Kristen Barden from the Adams Morgan Partnership and Business Improvement District. Good evening, Kristen. How are you
Hey,
doing?
here we go. All right, now hopefully I won't get blocked off. And so as I did last month. That was frustrating. But a few things going on. So we too we have a board meeting next Tuesday, and we too will be talking about the Columbia Road Bus Priority Project and the work that we did with Lee and Jake and DDOT last week. So thank you all for sticking with us. It was a very long meeting, but we got through a lot, and I think it was really productive. So we'll be talking about that at our Tuesday board meeting. We have a number of events coming up. Yeah, it was a 3+ hour long meeting. Yeah, it started at 4 and went till after 7. We've gotten approval from the Mayor's Special Events Task Group to do 3 road closures, pedestrian zones. The first one is going to be July 29th. The road closure will start at 11. This is between Kalorama and Columbia Road. The event itself will start at 1 and it'll go till 8. The street will reopen at 9 on the 29th. And this is going to be a food focused event. We're calling it Eats in the Streets at the pedestrian zone. And we're encouraging all restaurants, both within the closure zone and throughout the neighborhood, to come and have a presence using the existing unused streetery spaces, but the space that's behind the Jersey walls. We are not able to put any like semi-permanent structures in the 20-foot fire lane, which is basically the 2 lanes that are left. So we will put some tables and chairs and things like that can be easily pushed aside, but there won't be any vendors in that space because we're prohibited from doing that because of fire EMS rules. But we're also going to have activities for kids. We're going to have face painting and balloon animals again, and the penny farthing, which is that bicycle with a huge front wheel and the small back wheel. That's kind of fun to watch. That bike doesn't have brakes, which I never realized. So the way he stops it is he just jumps off. So it takes some skill to ride that in many ways. And then we've confirmed today that we're going to have Foamboree, which is the foam party for kids, which is like the latest, like cool, fun thing. So they're going to come from 1 to 6, I think. And we're going to put them probably right there at Belmont. Well, there'll be more room for the kids to play in the foam. DC Water is going to be there with their misting tent and their refillable bottle station, so people can refill water bottles there as well. So there's a fire hydrant right there at Belmont. So both of those activities need water, so we'll be putting them there. We're going to have some music at this event also, probably in 2 different locations, but it's not quite like Porch Fest. But it's really a food focused event, but we also want to have some music for people's enjoyment. There'll be some exercise classes. So there'll be some of the pedestrian zone stuff from last year, but it's really going to be more focused on food. So we have the advisory committee that's still meeting on Wednesdays. We had a meeting today. We'll have another one in 2 weeks on the 19th, I think, at noon. And the ANC commissioners are always welcome. Jake frequently participates in those. So if you want to dive into the nitty gritty of these events, please feel free to join us for those. They're on Zoom. And so that's the July 29th event. We'll be doing the Kalorama Park Admiral Vibe concerts. We'll be doing 4 of those starting that first Wednesday in August. They're from 6 to 7:30, I think. We have 2 of the 4 bands confirmed. We just today got the dates confirmed with DPR. They have been a little slow to respond, but finally today we got the dates confirmed. So the first 4 Wednesdays in August, and then the 5th Wednesday in August will be the rain date if we need it. But we've got Justin Trewick is coming back. He performed last year. And then I think it's August 23rd, we've got this really cool symphony. It's not a full symphony. It's going to be pieces of the symphony, but they play exclusively video game music. It's a video game symphony. And so that we think is just super cool. And because science is going to be doing some science related activities for kids also before the concerts and when the symphony takes a break. So that's going to be just a really fun evening. And I think that's August 23rd, I think, if I have that date right. So that's a little bit about our programming. And then the other 2 pedestrian zones that we've gotten approval for, one will be for Adams Morgan Day Festival. And that's, not our event. That's the Adams Morgan Community Alliance that puts on the festival. We're helping them with the street closure through the Streets for the People grant. So that'll be Sunday, September 10th. It's always the 2nd Sunday in September. I'm not certain about the hours for that. Again, it's the Adams Morgan Community Alliance's event. But the 18th Street will be closed for Adams Morgan Day this year. So yay. Last year, they would not give us that date, but this year they are. So it's progress. And then for Porch Fest in the fall, which will be Saturday, October 14th, that'll be the 3rd pedestrian zone. So we will be closing 18th Street for Porch Fest in October. And I'm also really pleased to confirm that the headliner band will be the Screaming Trojans with Mark Bryan from Hootie and the Blowfish. So that's going to be really fun. They'll be playing at 5 o'clock. And the whole event, is from 2 to 6 on Saturday, the 14th. So lots more to come with that, but it's really cool to have a headliner like that. So, and I'm happy to answer any questions if people have them.
Well, that's great. I think that I can speak for most of us when we're excited to hear that there's at least 3 days where 18th Street will be pedestrian oriented. Commissioners, any questions?
Yeah, those are all thanks to the Streets for the People grant funding. So as you all know, it's really expensive to close the street. And so it's, through that grant funding that we're able to do that. Oh, and I should also mention the barriers, Linda, I don't know if that's what your question is, but okay, I'll come back to you in a second. So the movable barriers that I know a lot of you have been very interested in is there's a meeting happening this week with Tomas Talamonte from the mayor's office and Sala Sapari from the mayor's office of Nightlife and Culture. They're meeting with MPD because MPD is the last okay that we need for the purchase of these removable barriers. So they're already being used by Audi Field. They bring them in for event game days. So they're already being used in the city. So our hope is that we would purchase them with the remaining funds from the Streets for the People grant money from last year. And that they would be available for us to use for our events in Adams Morgan, but we would make them available to organizations throughout the city to use them. And the city would actually take ownership of them. I mean, this is city money after all, and make them available for any other group to use. And now DC government employees are going to have to be trained on how to use them. They weigh 750 pounds each. So not everybody can move them. They're heavy. I could lift one up and down, but move it, probably not. So, because there's a special lift that comes with them. So you can use the lift and, move one up and down, but they're pretty heavy. So yeah, we're hoping that we will buy them, we'll gift them back to the city, and then the city will own them and let organizations use them for special events throughout the city. Because the goal of this whole thing, right, is to reduce the expenses for street closures. So to reduce the need for as many MPD officers, for the dump trucks, for the cruisers, for all of that. So that's our hope is that we'll be able to gift them back to the city, and then the city will make them available for organizations to use all across the city. So that's where we are with that. So hopefully there'll be some good news soon, because we only have until August to spend the remaining funds from last year's grant. So we need to get that purchase order in and move this along quickly. So, and everybody's cognizant of that. So, and unfortunately it's, it's a lot of last minute stuff, but that's the way it is. So, yeah, Linda, I think you had a question.
Yeah, I was wondering, is the nightlife task force still in effect? Is it still operating?
Yes, I think so. That's
And I don't, maybe Lauren from Councilmember Nader's office knows. I just didn't know if it was a couple weeks ago, and I haven't noticed lately, but there's still a lot of cars that will double park in front of what was formerly Phil's in the turn lane, and it's happening on weekends.
Yeah.
So I just didn't know if the task force was still doing their thing on the weekends, or if we need to remind or give another nudge.
Yeah, no, we've told MPD about that, and we've told DDOT about it. The DDOT is the part of the problem is the signage, and the striping there is all worn away. And so DDOT has put it on their plan to restripe and repaint that dedicated turn lane. That's part of the problem is it's not obvious.
I thought part of the goal was that they were going to get an immediate tow, because that was the push of not to just tell them they're bad. I thought the point of the task force was to do immediate towing. And I don't know if that's happening still. I feel like they sort of aren't enforcing it as much as they used to. They're not being as active with towing as it was a lot of show at first, and I feel like it's fizzled out.
Yeah. I'll ask Sala, because
Okay.
he was sort of the key coordinator with that. So but that's a good question. I'll ask him.
All right, thank you so much. Lots of updates as always. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you again. Have a good evening, Tristan.
Sure. All right, take care. Bye.
So I think we're prepared to move to the rest of our agenda. Consent agenda, I did send it out pretty late. Hopefully this is the last time that we'll have this scenario with minutes, but it's not really debatable because it's on the consent agenda. If someone wants to take it off and discuss it, we can. I will note that because last month was hybrid and we had a couple people with connection issues and things, that the vote totals, I made sure to go off of what the secretary's report was, because the number of commissioners present in the meeting changed multiple times as the meeting progressed, but I think I got it. So I'll move to approve of the June minutes. Can I get a second? Or to approve the consent agenda? Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes 8-0. We will move to, there's no items that were supported or recommended from any committees. So there's just 2 items that are general business. One, on the 13th, which is next week, ABCA is holding a public hearing that is to discuss specifically our resolution that we passed, I believe it was in May, regarding the moratorium zone. I had already announced that I was planning on testifying, but it doesn't hurt to get it so that we have something that represents us collectively. So if it doesn't pass, I'll still be presenting, but just as my individual commissioner capacity. But I shared the testimony I wrote. If anyone has any questions or further comments, etc., this will be time to do it. But I try to make it pretty both reflective of what the text is and our experience of the past months beforehand, getting to that point to try to be really as fairly reflective of all of the different voices that we're trying to balance as possible. Any questions, comments, concerns with that? Anyone in the community that is attending tonight have any questions, comments, concerns regarding this item? Now would be the time to bring them. All right, well, I will move to have me present this as a testimony supported by the commission. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Looks like it passes 8-0. And one other item, so this is kind of alluding to what Lauren was saying earlier. And I'll be honest, I didn't know exactly how to write this, but I did want to write something because of the timeliness and also, unfortunately, general prevalence of this type of conduct in DC government, as well as how it seems that there's potential speculation that this could be a kind of recurring issue with this individual, which is John Falchicchio, and then potentially other people within DC government. I don't think that any other commissions that I know of have written a resolution, but there's appetite to do so. ANC 4B did write a resolution that is in the general vicinity of what we're talking about and is very thorough. So I did try to cite that, but to kind of formally introduce, I put together a resolution essentially trying to say that, and I put this vaguely, we could change if we want, that there should be some sort of pressure from our ANC to say that it shouldn't be the mayor that is investigating the mayor's office. It should be some outside entity. The question of what that body should be is kind of up for debate. We heard the Inspector General, we've heard OAG and other places, U.S. Attorney General. There's a question of if it's something that's related to job infraction versus a criminal infraction. I didn't want to get too specific. It's not really our purpose. I just want to put some sort of pressure. I'm curious if anyone's had any thoughts. That was kind of the main point I tried to convey in this, as well as some others that I believe it's ANC 3C is developing as well to potentially use. And ideally, well, maybe not ideally, but at least potentially, I think there might be other ANCs that will be looking to our example to try to go off of. So I want us to get something that is useful in that sense, but also that it serves the specific purpose of bringing attention to this from the ANC perspective. Council's doing it, and of course, that's more forceful than an ANC saying anything, but it doesn't really hurt for us. And I took the time to write it, so I don't mind. Thoughts, comments, suggestions?
I do have one question, because do you include mayoral appointments to boards and commissions?
What do you mean? In what
Well,
regard?
in terms of who should be referred to a third party, do you include mayoral appointments to boards and commissions?
I'm reading the text right now.
I thought it did, and that's why I was asking. I don't have it in front of me. Hold on a second. Let me get it
I
up.
think the way I phrased it, and like I said, I deliberately put it vague, which has its disadvantages, but I think the wording says that be it further resolved, the ANC suggests that ANC 4B's resolution from April and also the proposed legislation that Councilmember Doe has put forward should guide the process for choosing an appropriate investigatory body for past and future sexual harassment accusations of DC government officials. So it wouldn't be the same as someone that you're saying that if it's maybe to change it so it include people who are
Well,
nominated.
no, I don't. I think that for mayoral appointees for employees, as in deputy mayors and the all 500 of them, 500, 800, okay, that all the Schedule C employees for DC government, not just the upper echelon, but I would say all 800 of them. But to add boards and commissions, I think that becomes onerous on people who are volunteers, even if they have a stipend of essentially volunteers.
So I think I hear what you're saying. Do you have a recommendation that you're putting forward, or are you just commenting?
No, I don't have it in front of me, unfortunately. I thought I did. I don't.
I mean, the way it's phrased, if we're thinking about the same clause, is DC government officials. It's not a particularly specific, as far as I know, there's not a specific.
Why don't we change that DC government officials to mayoral full-time employees, mayoral appointments who are full-time employees?
I see what you're saying. Anyone have thoughts on this? Because I see the balance of trying to say, not saying just every single city employee, because that's thousands of people, but also not just having it be a handful of people, right? Trying to find kind of a happy ground. Commissioner,
I mean, the mayor buries people, not this mayor, but mayors in the past, okay, have buried their friends and people they look out for way below the level that we're talking about here. And I think that it would really be in all of those instances, any mayoral appointee that's a full-time employee should be subject to this, but not zoning commission, ABC board, not those people, because they're volunteers, even though they get a stipend. Stipend? Stipend.
Yeah.
So maybe this is a question for the lawyers, because So is the resolution, would it only, are we drawing the line when it's when it's a sexual harassment complaint that we'd want an independent outside counsel? Is that sort of
That is a line, of course, that we can decide how to draw. And that's one question I've heard from elsewhere as well.
right? Because we know that there's misuse of how contracts are worded that are not necessarily in a sexual nature. I just wonder I'm a little torn about this. I think the politics of it are, we have a mayor that did not handle this well and could have been handled better. And I feel like we're doing a reaction that's more political versus thinking of terms in long-term effects, like what we could do to build a better infrastructure to protect survivors of this and also just sort of protect general misdeeds in our government. So it's like I support it, but I'm also a little frustrated by it. And the mayor's office of legal counsel, they are supposed to act as an independent, if I understand this correctly about how these are supposed to work, they're supposed to act independently. I know that they're there to protect the city and make sure we don't pay out a lot of money, right? For a lawsuit. So they have our interests at heart as residents. And I think there's a perception that maybe that they are tainted or acting politically in favor of the mayor. That's the impression. I don't know if that's what others are having or why we're reacting this way. But I know as a civil servant that works in the federal government that I work for the US people and that I act independently to do that work. And I want to also trust the civil servants of the DC government who are working as workers for the DC government. And I want to trust their judgment and trust their expertise. So with the asking, that office has done their job. If any of those people on the mayor's legal counsel, if they did not recuse themselves from this investigation, that's a bigger problem. But my assumption is that all of them did it independently and did the work they're supposed to do because that's what their office is supposed to do. I don't know, that's a lot of things to say, not a lot, maybe, but I'm a little torn on it because there is sort of a system in place. If it was used correctly and right, I don't know. And also, I just want to know where we draw the line. And I also want the district residents or those who worked for the District of Columbia government as non-appointees to know that we trust them and value the work and value what they're doing.
No, that point's taken. I'll speak to my intention behind the original text. Because I personally don't think that being super reactionary is always helpful, and that does happen quite a bit. Although I will say in this case, at least for me, reveals an opportunity to reflect on in real time, basically, how the process gets implemented, and to be able to use that as an example for, ideally preparing for ideally never having to deal with sexual harassment claims again, because it never happens. Realistically, understanding that in this case and in general, there probably will be, and or other cases, or other instances, there will probably need to be, reflective on the situation, because that isn't exactly a typical thing, but it does show, I think to some degree, the potential for I don't know, not necessarily foul play, but mischievous implementation of how things get done on the part of the mayor's office, and we can draw attention to that. I mean, there's a good chance that this won't do anything from us. We're just an ANC, and there's higher powers that are pressuring. I don't think it hurts. Like I also said, it was tough to try to find that balancing act for where do the lines get drawn. Someone in the comments was suggesting or asking what the timeline is, and if people in the community essentially could be helpful. I mean, it's up to us. We could always delay things, but stuff like this often has more impact if we're timely, just because by the time we have another meeting, the situation could change. There could be new legislation that is passed or proposed, who knows? But I believe other ANCs might be open to that, because if any ANC is putting something forward, and if we're supporting one another and building upon each other's past work, that can end up resulting in something that's impactful. So put briefly, I think that, in my opinion, it probably isn't worth for us to delay this particular resolution to future meetings just to decide if we want to support it or not tonight. But if people in the community would like to be involved in kind of shaping more refined language, I think there might be opportunity elsewhere in the city, and that would be still, I think, a valuable use of time if people wanted to do so. Any other questions, comments?
I think one of the things that we're focused so much on the current situation that I don't think we're aware that this is not the first time that this has occurred in DC government. And this goes back 50 years of very similar instances, if not more egregious. And in the past, they were always shuffled under the table. And I don't think they should be shuffled under the table. I think somebody from the outside looking at it is appropriate. And I think it should go beyond, I think it should be all mayoral appointees, full-time employees. So I think there are 600, there used to be 600 people that the mayor got to appoint to jobs. And I think they should all be subject to, because you don't know where somebody's brother-in-law is being buried.
But wouldn't, to the Commissioner Shapiro, wouldn't each agency have their own legal counsel? Like, so if it's a sexual harassment claim against a appointee at DDOT, I'm making it up, I'm making this up. Wouldn't they have their own process within their own agency to do
They have
that?
their own process, and government has its own process, absolutely does. And if a ticket writer gets, charged with sexual harassment, they're going to get screwed over. But let's say our future mayor's goddaughter gets a position, an appointed position in DC government, and that goddaughter sexually harassed somebody, and there's a complaint, and the mayor calls, that agency says, hey, just shuffle it under. That's why I really think we have to be aware that it's not just a dozen people at the top that get protected by a mayor. There are hundreds of them. And I'm not saying it's this mayor, definitely not saying it's this mayor, but I know historically that has happened in prior years, prior mayors.
Yeah, point taken. I do think that it might even be beyond the scope of this resolution, and maybe the commission to basically rework those workings of how the government works. I mean, it could be a discussion. And also on the point of, historically, I try to capture some of it. Ideally, I admit I was very, very slightly tempted to do a little bit more digging and to cite past administrations as well of kind of a pattern of behavior. It would have taken way too much time, so I didn't. But at least with this mayor, I tried to demonstrate, because this is what has been observed, multiple instances of where this pattern of basically ignoring what seemed to be credible accusations in favor of putting someone into a position of power is something that led us to this moment, and hopefully this is an opportunity to cut it off, curtail it towards the future. But I don't know. Those are my thoughts. Anyone else have any? Commissioner Michaelson?
I think this is timely, and if we don't adopt this here and we don't have a meeting in August, we really lose the moment to speak out. Also, I tend to support Varney's conception of the scope here. And I in the resolution, I think I captured his recommendation, which was to replace DC government officials with mayorally appointed full-time DC government employees. I would support that. I think that's a reasonable scope. That's the population where there's a conflict of interest. If anyone that is appointed by the mayor or anyone in an office appointed by the mayor is doing that investigation, there is at least the risk or the perception of a conflict of interest. And hopefully there are very few of these investigations in any given year. Hopefully, but I think that's a reasonable scope. I'm not trying to, expand it to all DC employees at all. And I understand why appointees of boards and commissions might be seen as onerous. So I liked Barney's suggestion there.
Yeah, I like your amended text. I mean, the way the friendly amendments work is if no one opposes it, we can adopt it. And if someone does, we can put it to a vote. I'm fine with it if no one else has any issues. Just narrow it slightly to that text, which is mayorally appointed full-time DC government employees. So I'll make that switch. Any other questions, comments from commissioners, from the general public as well? All right, so yeah, like I said, hopefully this is an example that other ANCs can take and make even better. We're not writing the law, we're not writing the internal policies of agencies of the mayor's office. So don't want to put too much pressure on our backs, but we are capable, I think we've proven, of having the discussion at length if we want to. So this did not come from committee, so I'll move to, what do I want to do here? This is a resolution.
I'll move the resolution as amended.
Yeah, Commissioner Shapiro moves. I will second, with the caveat of who should we send this to? I guess all of council and the mayor. To send to all of them, all 14 of them. So put it to a vote. All those in favor of this resolution passing, please say aye.
I
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 8-0. That's our agenda for tonight. Shortest meeting of the year, but still a good one. Enjoy.
Well, forget it.
Have
No, I
a
was
good.
gonna say that since the zoning commission had changed the context of the U Street development, I was going to suggest that it be referred to the PZT committee for review.
And we could have that discussion again through email. I sent a pretty extensive email. I'm not sure if
I
you saw
thought,
it.
yeah.
I have not had time to weed through all of it just yet.
All
So
right.